believe they came by boat. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was the Queen Mary or one of those. And they settled in Detroit. My grandfather got a job at Timkins, which made ball bearings and stuff for the automotive industry. He lived about a block away. They bought a house on 5631 Celeron Street, and it was an income, so that included 5633 Celeron Street. They had 2 children after Joseph, my mom Mary and my uncle Edward. My mom stayed with her parents and eventually met my dad shortly after World War II, and they got married and had 7 children. I was the youngest of 7. Celeron, with all our neighbors across the street, the houses were wiped out to make I-75. And I remember as a kid, when we were young, we would toboggan down the hills before they put the road in. At the same time, they had the riots going on. And I remember sitting on my porch and watching all these trucks, full of National Guards and all Army guys and our Green Army trucks would go by, and I'd wave to them because I was only 6 years old. And they're all camped out at Clark Park about a mile away for the '67 riots. I think it was '69 or '68, I got hit by a car because I was running across the street in front of the YMCA at Clark Park. And that put me in the hospital for like 6 weeks, and I had my leg in traction. Then I got out of the hospital. I was in a hospital bed at home for like 3 months. And I was immobile. I'll never forget that because I couldn't get out of the bed. And I had this giant cast that went all the way up to my chest, all the way down one leg, and halfway down the other with this big stick in the middle. And my mom wouldn't make me a diaper type thing. She just gave me a blanket. Then people come over and say, "Let me see your cast." And they pull the blanket off, and I'd be all embarrassed because I had nothing on underneath. There was this big cutout for my butt to go to the bathroom. I just wanted to die. I hated it. And I went back to school. I had a tutor. I was in 2nd grade. There was only 3 bedrooms in the upper flat. Most of us slept on the floor. My mom and dad had a bedroom. My older sister had a bedroom. And I think my brother, Pat, the oldest, slept downstairs with my grandparents. And my other 2 sisters had a bedroom. So me and my brother and my sister Kathy were the youngest. We slept on the floor. I slept on the floor until I was in 9th grade. And then my dad, finally, as the kids moved out, we got our own room. My dad bought us bunk beds for me and my brother. And then we get in the bunk beds, and then the next day he'd yell at us because we were back on the floor because we couldn't sleep on them. We weren't used to sleeping on mattresses. So it was rough. And plus, being the youngest, I got beat up the most. It was different. We didn't have to get rides to go see friends. We just go down the street, and we never rang a doorbell. We just stand in front of the house and yell their names out. Like, "Charlie!" 9 o'clock in the morning. My mom would let us out till 9 o'clock. And we'd hook up with our friends, and we'd never be back till it was dark. We didn't come home for lunch or did nothing like that. We played all day in the alleys. We played baseball. We'd collect cans and go get pop. And then we'd come home at, 9 o'clock at night. Then my sister would say, "You smell like a rat." And we'd be all sweaty and stinky. And I remember telling my sisters, "How do you know? Have you ever smelled a rat?" We'd have to take a bath and start it all over again for the whole summer vacation. We used to play baseball a lot and strike out and hang drop from garages and climb roofs and all that kind of stuff. That was our big fun. I went to Holy Redeemer for 12 years. My whole family went to Holy Redeemer. And my mom graduated from Holy Redeemer in 1941 when the girls and boys school were separated. Yeah, we all went there, and most of us all got married there as well. One day I remember going to school, because we had an upper flat, there was no way to get to the basement, and my mom would wash clothes. You have to go outside the stairway, so you'd have to dress up really, really warm, with all your winter clothes on and boots, and go outside, and the snow would be 6 inches deep on this outside stairway. You'd practically kill yourself to get down to the basement to get clothes. My mom would never bring clothes up. She'd wash them and leave them down there. I'll never forget, I got all bundled up, had my pants on, socks, boots, put my coat on. Was going to go down to the basement to get my shirt. I was running late. I, got my lunch and ran to school because it was 7 blocks. I got all the way to the school, and I went in the coat room, unzipped my coat, and I realized I forgot to go down the basement to get a shirt, and I had no shirt on. So I took my coat off. Here I am with nothing but skin, and I'm like all embarrassed. So I had to tell the nun. I said, I'm sorry, they thought I was being a smart aleck. I got in trouble. I said, no, I forgot. We have to go outside to get our clothes. And I forgot, so I got sent home, and I got in trouble. I had to go home and get a shirt. I got my first job when I was 11 years old. I got a paper route. You had to be 12, but back then there was no way to check ID, and I told them I was 12 because I wanted the money. And I had the worst route in the neighborhood in Delray, and every Thursday was collection, and I'd get robbed every Thursday when I go to collect. This guy would come up to me and say, all the money I find in you I keep, and every week I'd try to hide it in different spots, and he'd find it. So my mom finally said, this isn't working out because you're paying more money for the newspapers than you're making money. We had mostly, in my neighborhood back then, was mostly Americans, Polish, a lot of Maltese, and, you know, that kind of neighborhood. Then we had a lot of, you know, more Spanish, and just a few, you know, black people and stuff like that. But we didn't know what racism and all that was back then. We didn't, I mean, I take that back. In my house there wasn't racism, but in my neighborhood there was a lot of Southerners, and they were really racist, and I could never understand that. You know, I knew of your mom and your sister, and I'd see them. They were a younger class. So I thought I was all cool. I had my motorcycle. I had no t-shirt on. Your mom came up to me and said, big tears in her eyes from all being all graduated. Said, will you come to my party? And I said, oh yeah, okay. And I busted out laughing. And I told my buddy, I said, yeah, Mary Derrick says, will you come to my party? You know, Mom's garage ended up on another street. The garage door was open, and my buddy Joe says, oh, here's a party hero, there's Paul. And I said, man, I don't want to stop, I got no shirt on. And so we said hi to Paul, and then your mom came out and said hi. We hung out for a little bit, and then some kids in the neighborhood or something started a fight, and then I cleaned house and made everybody go and chased everybody away. All these troublemakers chased them down the street, and your mom was real mad at me because I kicked everybody out. So then I felt really bad, so the next day I called your mom and told her I was sorry. I said, do you want to go to the ethnic festivals back downtown? And she said, okay, so I took her to the ethnic festival, and that was it. I lived more in the ghetto, and your mom lived in a nicer neighborhood. Back then, just a matter of blocks could be nice neighborhoods or crappy neighborhoods. A lot of gangs and drugs and stuff like that. Your mom had a more la-di-da thing. The difference between then is I was more street smart, and even though your mom didn't live that far away, she was not as street smart as me. We had different neighbors all the time because there was, you know, transients, people would come and go, and there was rental houses, and you know, and I lived on the street and played on the street, so I was more street savvy because the block over was a main street, Fort Street. And like I said, climbed roofs and did weird stuff, and Mom was out there playing with Barbies and normal stuff with the neighbors. So we were more street smart. But it was, everybody watched out for themselves, and a lot, even though it was a worse neighborhood, it was safer than I think it is now because people knew who you were and they looked out for each other. But in the suburbs, it's different because you have to drive everywhere. We used to walk everywhere, skateboard everywhere, ride bikes everywhere. And you just knew your boundaries, and you knew where the good side of town was and the bad side of town and what route to take. Plus there was a lot, you know, there's a lot of resources down there when I was a kid. We had half days, so we'd go down to the river, me and my buddy Joe, and go fishing on Fridays. My dad, he was double promoted in Denby, and he worked at Chrysler's, and he shot up the ladder so fast that my grandfather worked for Chrysler's in the stamping plant in Tool and Die, and my dad became his boss, which was really odd back in the day. So my dad was like an executive by the time he was 30 years old. And my mom would just save the checks, and Chrysler Company would call and keep telling her to cash the checks because she never cashed them. She just put them in a drawer because we didn't need the money to live on. You know, he always wanted to move out. My mom, we'd all go in the car to go look at houses, like in East Detroit in the suburbs, and she wouldn't even get out of the car. She'd cry. You know, because he wanted to better his life. So, and he quit Chrysler's, started his own business, and then stamping business. And this young kid lost his arm. And my dad really felt bad about it and walked away from the business, and then everything went downhill from there. I'm like my dad as far as being funny and just